you. So, yes, we've heard some very interesting talks, and it's amazing how these talks actually trigger something for me every time I hear them, so I decided to change my introduction completely. Because something that came up for me during these talks is Catherine talked about getting to a point in a business where she felt she was in a job, and she had to change something. Brad talked about getting to a point in his career where he couldn't stay in that job anymore. And I'm going to talk about the fact that I love my job. And I'm actually very happy to be a project manager as well as a coach. I love being a project manager. It's because I love telling people what to do. But as a coach, I can't do that. So the topic today is, how do I actually coach within one single organization? So I am an employee who is an internal coach, but also uses coaching every day with my team. And I'm going to tell you a bit about my story, how I got here. And also I want to answer 3 questions that you haven't asked me, but there are who are my clients? What is so amazing about coaching in the workplace, and what's so crap about it? So my story is very simple. I started my Animas training. That's because I was bored at my job, and I realized that later. I didn't hate my job. I was just bored. So I needed for something to change. And I went through my course, and I was very excited, and I was 100% sure I wanted to be a one-to-one coach. Okay, my idea was to walk along the beach with the phone in my hand and then coach my coachees from there. And it's written down in my goals. Well, it turns out that was crap. Because what happened is that I kept feeling I was unfulfilled through this journey. So I did my coaching training, I did my training coaching sessions with my coachees, and that was very exciting and lovely, but I wasn't happy. So I sort of chased Nick to start a new launchpad to learn how to build the business. And I jumped in and it did one thing up to the other. Every month I have a new topic. My business was completely new every month. And then I got to a point where I realized that I was just doing the wrong thing for myself. I had different needs. I wanted to be part of a team, of a bigger team, part of something that was bigger than myself. And I wanted to be in an environment where I could support people, but I could also be supported in return. And I learned that through the coaching that I learned and then I got through the training and the launchpad. And that's when the right opportunity came up for me. So suddenly I got an interview with another big company, and when I showed up, the person who interviewed me, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy you're a coach, because we need coaching in this company." And I'm like, perfect. And that's how she became my boss, and I got to use coaching every single day, being an internal coach and on the job with my team. So the first question I want to answer is, who is your client? Who do you coach when you are at work? As I said, there's internal coaching on one side, and there's coaching on a job on the other. Well, at least what I call coaching on the job. I don't know if there's a technical term for it. So if you're an internal coach, basically you are an employee who coaches other employees. Very simple. Usually there is a sort of a structured process in place. Basically you are assigned a coachee, and then you schedule your sessions. It works like a one-to-one, but you don't get the money. The coaching on the job is much more flexible, because that can happen at any time, and it can be very random. It can be in a meeting, in a call with a client, in a performance review, with a team, etc. And we don't really talk about coaching sessions in that case, because it's literally a chat. Or you suddenly start asking questions and everyone freaks out. So who do I coach? In my company, I'm quite fortunate, I would say, because I coach in every direction. So I have 2 juniors that report into me directly, and I use coaching with them to help them get the experience and the understanding of how projects should run. So we use coaching in our one-to-one sessions and when I have to give feedback to them. And this is very important to me because they get to their own conclusions, and those conclusions stay with them forever. I don't have to tell them what they need to do. I just need to create a space where they can explore what they think is the right thing to do. And the growth that I can see in them is exponential, much more than if I sat there every single day telling them what I had to do. And another thing that I do with them, I actually try not to give them negative feedback. I actually go to a coaching stage where I let them explore what's going well and what they would need to work on. And this happened with one of my coachees recently, my juniors recently. Something wasn't clicking, and I knew what that was, but I didn't want to tell him. Because I knew that he would be like, oh yeah, you're right, and then nothing would happen. I wanted him to get to a point where he would realize it. Well, luckily for me, he got to the same conclusion that I got. And the good thing for me is that I didn't even have to say anything negative about what he was doing. It was just a next step in his career development. I coach my colleagues. I work across different teams on different projects. So I usually work with my colleagues when they need to sort out something which is related to difficult clients. And by difficult, I don't mean mean clients. We have them, but we don't talk to them. I mean clients that don't know how to verbalize what they want. So there was this particular client who was sending a lot of requests, and everyone was getting a bit stressed because they were staying longer hours in the office, and they didn't know why they kept getting these requests. I mean, we are supposed to be the experts at what we do, so just the thought was, leave us alone. We had a meeting, and I just went into pure coaching mode. It was like, I'm not telling you anything, I'm just asking questions. And it turns out they knew exactly what the client was trying to get, but they didn't have either the time or the will to address that particular issue. So once they got to the bottom of it and they addressed the key need that the client had, they were able to relax because the client stopped sending all these nagging requests for things, like the client was doing their job. So coaching downwards, so my juniors, sideways, my colleagues, and I'm lucky enough because I have 2 of the senior managers in the company that tend to come to me quite often when they need to sort out some stuff in their heads. They don't need me to tell them what to do. Well, I couldn't anyway. They just need space. They just need a coaching space because sometimes they're so bombarded with requests from every side that they don't have the time to sit down and properly process what they need to do. So I often have 5 minutes in a training room with them. And the last sort of set of clients is my team. We're all brand new to the company. The team never existed before in my department. So we are setting it up from the ground. So we meet, and then we just go into sort of group coaching with the things that, what is Rob? I did the CPD on group coaching with Rob. So we do all these kind of exercises to try to understand what we want to create. Who do we want to be? How do we want to deal with the other teams and the other departments? So there's different layers when you are at work, as there's many one-to-one clients you can coach if you have your own private practice. The second question is, what's so amazing about coaching at work? You know, if you're a one-to-one coach and you have your private practice, you might say, oh no, coaching at work is boring. I actually find it very exciting for 2 reasons. One is that, to me, it comes natural. But the most selfish reason is that it makes my life so much fucking easier. Because sometimes I can relax and I can get people to figure out what they need to do themselves without me having to tell them all the time. Coaching is also a great tool in the workplace because it helps you create trust with your colleagues, especially if you're new in that department and you come in from a sort of mid-senior position. You're not the enemy, because when you use coaching, they realize pretty soon that you have trust in them. You know they can come up with their own solution, and they have all the knowledge and all the skills to do what they are supposed to do. But I'm not the only one benefiting from coaching, of course. You know, the coaches do as well. Well, I hope so. They haven't fired me yet, so I think it works. So a few weeks ago, actually, Karen posted in the Animas lounge. Yes, Karen, you did. She asked internal coaches to list the benefits of internal coaching that they experienced. And some of these responses were on the line of creating a safe space for the coachee to talk about their work problems, but also those problems that are personal and they didn't want to disclose maybe with their boss. And that's very important because I show up at work as an entire person. You know, if I have a bad morning, that means I haven't had my coffee, I show up in the office and I'm half human. And this happens to everyone. So being able to get to work and talk to someone you trust about your problems, your personal problem, is great, because those personal problems might be the reason why you're not performing as well as you should in your job. It might be they're distracting you from what you're there to do. You might love your job, but then something else in your private life happens, you know, breakup, whatever, and then you are just mentally not there. There's one thing, actually, there's two things that I really love, and these are actually very personal. One is that, you know, when you are a one-to-one coach and you get to a point where you say goodbye to your coachees, you know, you might keep in touch, or they might just simply disappear. And that frustrated me a bit when I was doing one-to-one coaching privately, because I love seeing the results of the work that I do in the workplace and in my private life. But when I am at work, they can't simply escape, because I work with them. I know where they sit. I know who the line manager is. So I can always follow up, either with them or with the line manager or the head of the department, see how things are going. And that's really fulfilling for me, because it goes back to one of the needs that I mentioned before, feeling that I was part of something bigger than myself. This is how I measure if I'm meeting that need or not. And I totally forgot the second one. I know I said that there were two reasons. I totally forgot the second one. So in my opinion, coaching at work is amazing, and it should be introduced in every single company, either in a more structured way, like internal coaching, or a more fluid way, like coaching, you know, one-to-one or teams, just sort of informally as part of your job. But it has its own unique set of challenges. And I've picked 3 of them for today. And these are the hardest one I have to deal with every single day. Other people might have a different top 3, but these are the ones that I struggle the most. And the first one is, who is actually my client? Because when you coach one-to-one, yes, there's you, the coach, and you do the coaching, and then you have a coachee who gives you the money and receives the coaching. The transaction is pretty clear. But when you're coaching within an organization, I think there's 4 different entities you need to keep into consideration. One is you as a coach, and you sit here, and you do the coaching. One is you as an employee, because you actually work there and you do other stuff. And then there's your coachee, who actually, in a way, is your client because they receive your coaching. But then you have the company who supports that coaching By paying your wages and paying the time for the employee to take part in coaching, they are investing in that. So who are you loyal to? How do you combine all these different elements? And this can be a big challenge because there's a lot of interests in place. As a coach, I want to give the best coaching that I can, but as an employee, I also want that coaching to reflect well on me. You know, I just won't sit there and be a project manager all of my life. I love working in an organization. I want my career to grow. So how do I reconcile that? The selfless, holistic coach that wants to create peace in the world, and then the more materialistic part of me that wants to grow in my career. But also, how do I reconcile the fact that the coachee and the company might have completely different expectations of the coaching that I'm giving? So who decides what the coaching is about? Is that the company who decides what the coaching program is about and what the goals are and how they're measured? Or is the coachee that shows up and then, you're supposed to work on your performance, but then they come up and say, oh, I'm getting a divorce, and this is why I'm not performing as well as I could. It can be really tricky because everyone has expectations. The company expects a return of investment. It's not a charity proposition they're doing by offering coaching to some of the people. Yes, they might do charity in other ways, but they want to see results. They want to know if that person will stay in their role, if their performance will improve, if they will be a good manager if they move to that different role they applied for. And there's a lot of people. When I say company, there's actually a lot of people that have interests in this. It can be the line manager, it can be the head of the division, the head of the department. In my case, there's 3 different people that when I coach someone try to sneak up on me, asking me how it's going. And I have to be really careful when I plan my coffee breaks. Because they usually go, oh, how's it going? How's Lauren doing? Because I can't tell them, because there's confidentiality at work. And confidentiality is another challenge that we need to be aware of. In private one-to-one coaching, you decide what's confidential or not, and usually we say that everything they say in the room is confidential, unless you get a court order and then you have to release whatever notes you have. But at work, everything is a bit more blurry. What kind of information do stay in the room between me and my coachee, and what kind of information goes back to the company? That's a really tricky question sometimes to answer, especially if there's no formal process in place. Like in my company, there isn't at the moment. It's something we are building, but there's no clear guidelines. So I need to tell my coachees in a way that they need to be careful what they disclose with me. Because if it's something that goes against the contract they signed or the code of conduct of the company, I am requested to report it back to the line manager. So if they show up drunk, I have to report it. Which is something that when I was doing one-to-one coaching, that never happened for a client to show up drunk. But I would just take the money and say, thank you, go and have some more booze. No, I wouldn't have done that. Well, maybe I would. It's ethical. So it can be a bit more complex in the transactions between the 4 different entities. The other challenge, that's the second challenge that I face most often, is reconciling my role as a coach, as an internal coach, and my role as a project manager. As I said, I work across quite a few different projects, and they tend to be quite big, which means they are chaotic. There's a lot of stuff to do, a lot of departments to make work together, and I do get to a point that sometimes I do resent having a coaching session scheduled with someone for that afternoon. And I use resent because that's a feeling that I feel. It's not, oh yeah, it's just annoyance. I'm like, why did I schedule a session then? Because that hour that I dedicate to someone means that I'm gonna spend another 2 hours in the office finishing off what is my work as a project manager. So that's very important for me to make sure not only that I schedule the sessions as rationally as I can, work is unpredictable, so you can't always get it right, but that I also give myself the time to move from grumpy project manager to sage coach, so that I offer the best coaching that I can to my coachee. And it's a bit embarrassing because the way I do it is I go and hide in the bathrooms. Because that's the only place in the company they can't find me. Well, they can, but I don't answer. And the third challenge that I do have quite often is actually not telling people what to do, especially when the coaching revolves around my area of expertise. In general, we say, as a coach, you don't need to be the expert in the coachee's life. You don't need to know about biomechanics or whatever they do in order to help them. And that's great. That's a blessing. But in my job, I'm the expert. And if they come to me and they need coaching about project management, I'm like, well, you should do that in my head. But of course, I do realize that if I tell them, then that learning is dissipated. They need to get to those conclusions themselves in order for those to stick. And that's probably, out of the three, the main struggle that I have with coaching at work. Because, who doesn't love telling other people what to do? But overall, I've experienced that coaching at work can make such a massive difference. And I'll just offer one single example. I have a colleague who's leaving next Thursday, and she's leaving because she's basically fed up. She's been very stressed, and she was on a very difficult project, so she decided to quit. And I started working with her a couple of months ago. And she told me that if she had received coaching the way that I'm giving it to her, like on the job, like on the side, hidden away, before, she wouldn't have left. Because she would have never got to a point where she was so burned out and fed up that basically she's counting the days or the minutes until she'd say, fuck you, and move back to Canada. So I've seen these massive differences that coaching can do at work, and I do recommend that if you are in a job, whatever it is, just bring it in. Bring it in. Tell everyone you're a coach. You'll be surprised how many people will come and look for you. But the most important thing is that Catherine said that building your own business requires courage. And that is true. But coaching at work requires a huge amount of it as well. And there's an alternative for you if building your business is not what you want. So think about it. Coaching at work is a valuable alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.